You're live. I'll be right back.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the Committee on Health and Human Services. Glad to see such a crowd. Appreciate all of you that are here to testify on the bill for coming. I know coming to downtown Atlanta is not the easiest thing in the world, and we really appreciate having citizen input. We now have a quorum, so we will get this ball rolling. First of all, Representative Ramsey has pulled House Bill 879 for 1 week. It will be on next week's schedule. We wanted to talk to some more groups about that, or some groups wanted to talk to him, and so he was gracious enough to let us take the bill off. We are going to call first House Bill 745. Representative Welch, if you are ready to present your bill.
Matt, do you want me to sit at the table? Or?
No, right there. And before you start, we do have a sign-up sheet right here on the corner. If anybody wants to speak on any of the bills, or the boys, the interns, can you put it to the back, Will, please? Thank you. Okay, Representative Welch.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, my name is Andy Welch. I'm the author of the bill that you have before you, 745. This is a study bill that would have the Department of Health examine the benefits and fiscal impacts of a study on using pulse ox screening as a way to detect critical congenital heart defects or disease in children. And today I'm a lawyer. I'm not an expert in medicine, and but I would like to introduce you to two mothers of children that have the CHD, and let them tell you a little bit about their stories and why pulse ox is something that needs to be studied in the state of Georgia. And also, I have two doctors that would like to share with you a little bit about the medicine behind the pulse ox machines. Melissa Harvey is here, and Jessica Hatcher are both here. Those are the two mothers that I'd like to let you hear from. And then also Drs. Matt Oster from Children's Healthcare of Atlanta and Dr. William Sexton from Emory School of Medicine. And Madam Chair, may I just turn
you want to step up, just sort of step to the side and then just give their names when they come up again?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you. Melissa?
And if you'll just give your name again, this is going out on the web, so as you speak, we can just start off with that.
My name is Melissa Harvey. Dear Madam Chairperson and ladies and gentlemen of the committee, good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss House Bill 745, introducing the study bill for pulse ox testing in newborns. My name is Melissa Harvey, and my family lives in Newnan, Georgia. I am here today as a mother of a child who 9 years ago was born with multiple congenital heart defects. On December 19, 2002, my daughter Olivia was born via C-section. She weighed 8 pounds, 12 ounces. Seemed pretty healthy. We even had numerous ultrasounds with a specialist to make sure everything was perfect during my pregnancy. A day later, our joy quickly turned in a matter of seconds. A nurse came in to check on us while I was nursing. She noticed that something wasn't quite right. She asked if she could just take Olivia down to the nursery and check her vitals. She promised she would bring her right back. Olivia never came back and was taken directly down to the neonatal intensive care unit. We had no idea anything was wrong with our new beautiful baby girl. Had it not been for a vigilant nurse that day that just happened to pop in our room to see how things were going, we would have gone home that day not knowing anything about her CHD. And it is a very good chance she would not be here today. We are thankful for the nurse that we had that day. However, I do know a family who was not so lucky. I recently had the privilege of meeting John and Natasha Boozer, parents to Max, who at 10 weeks old passed away just 3 months ago on November 15, 2011. His parents had no idea that anything was wrong with what seemed like a perfectly healthy baby boy. He was born a day before his due date, weighing 8 pounds 5 ounces, was the perfect baby, and was gaining weight just as he should. Sadly, he died suddenly in his father's arms. No warning signs, no clues, nothing telling him that their son had a severe congenital heart defect. They had to find out from the coroner that their son had died from CHD. In the United States, 1 in 100 babies are born with a congenital heart defect. CHDs are one of the top killers of infants under 1, killing more babies than SIDS. Nearly twice as many children die from CHD than all forms of childhood cancer combined. It's estimated that less than 25% of CHDs are detected prenatally, meaning thousands of mothers deliver a child not knowing something is gravely wrong with his or her heart. The simple pulse ox test could have detected my daughter's defects, saved Max's life, and so many others. The earlier CHD is detected and treated, the more likely a child will survive and have fewer developmental delays and long-term health complications. It is my hope that you will respond favorably to this bill and help us to advocate for its passage in the Senate. I can't find anything more important than saving a baby's life, and I'm hopeful that both sides of the aisle agree that this is important for the state of Georgia. Thank you for your time and listening to my story.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I don't know whether your daughter would appreciate having that baby picture when she's 9 years old today. So,
Ms. Jessica.
oh, well, better than a picture and a photograph.
Say hi. Hi. Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson and members of the committee. I would like to thank you for this opportunity today, and I hope that my testimony will help garner your support for House Bill 745 and help you understand better the benefits of pulse oximetry testing. I think that it is wonderful that we meet today during National Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week. There is no better time to discuss the prevalence of congenital heart defects in our state and what we can do to be proactive to help those affected by them. It is estimated that congenital heart defects affect about every 1 in 100 births in the United States. This makes it among the most common birth defects, and it is also the leading cause of birth defect-related deaths. In the category of congenital heart defects is a subcategory of rare and more serious diseases called cyanotic congenital heart diseases. There are 7 of these diseases, including one called hypoplastic left heart syndrome. My son Wyatt was born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. These 7 diseases are 100% fatal if left untreated. Currently, it is estimated that a significant percentage of the infants affected by these diseases are not detected before birth, leaving the other half to be diagnosed postnatally or potentially even after discharge from the hospital. It has been documented that allowing asymptomatic newborns to be discharged home without diagnosis significantly increases the morbidity and mortality rate. In 2009, the American Heart Association and American Academy of Pediatrics published a joint statement addressing the use of pulse oximetry in newborns. The writing group concluded that routine pulse ox screening performed on asymptomatic newborns before hospital discharge may aid in the detection of CCHD. Also, routine pulse oximetry performed after 24 hours in hospitals that have on-site pediatric cardiovascular services appears to incur very low cost and risk of harm. Since this statement was released, additional studies have been published. Other studies show that false positive results leading to unnecessary examinations of healthy newborns were rare, and that introducing pulse ox screening before discharge improved the total detection rate of CCHD to 92%. The authors concluded that such screening is cost neutral in the short term and may be cost effective in the long term, with reduced need for preoperative neonatal intensive care and probable prevention of neurological morbidity. Given the results of these studies and others done by the federal government in 2011, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius, released a statement issuing a federal recommendation of the use of pulse oximetry screening on newborns. The practice has also been recommended by the American Heart Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American College of Cardiology, and the March of Dimes. I hope that the committee finds that there is plenty cause to move forward with this study bill so that the state of Georgia can come to the conclusion that other states and the federal government have found, that pulse ox screening will save the lives of babies in Georgia. My son is here today a survivor of CCHD, against many odds, including 2 open heart surgeries and a heart transplant before he was 2 years old. Pulse ox testing may very well allow another child exactly what Wyatt has been afforded, a chance at life, which after all is a sovereign right. Thank you very much for your time today and again for this opportunity.
Well, thank you for coming. And Wyatt? Can we get Wyatt to, would you like to say something? Say hello or?
Hi. Can you say hi in the microphone?
So thank you very much for coming. Okay.
You can see from those 2 touching stories why I'm here. Dr. Oster, would you have a minute to speak?
Dr. Oster, if you'll tell us who you're with.
Absolutely. Dr. Matthew Oster. And if you could just plug this in over there, I'd appreciate it. So I'm not going to turn it on just yet. See the spot? Sure. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Matthew Oster. I'm a pediatric cardiologist with Sibley Heart Center at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and I'm a member of the American Academy of Pediatrics. I'm here today to speak in favor of this bill, which would ask the Georgia Department of Public Health to study pulse oximetry screening and determine if it should be added to the existing newborn screening panel for all Georgia infants. First, what is the scope of the problem? Each year in the United States, more than 40,000 babies, or approximately 1 in 100, are born with congenital heart defects. And of those, about a quarter will have a critical congenital heart defect. That is, a heart defect that causes low levels of oxygen in the blood and requires surgery as an infant in order to survive. In Georgia, this means that about 350 children are born each year with a critical congenital heart defect. And if not detected promptly, critical congenital heart defects may have catastrophic consequences. It is estimated that approximately 280 children with undetected critical congenital heart defects are discharged home from newborn nurseries annually in the United States. And this delayed diagnosis is estimated to lead to over 100 preventable deaths each year. How are critical congenital heart defects currently diagnosed? The current approach to detect critical congenital heart defects in the United States relies on prenatal ultrasounds and physical exams in the newborn nursery. Unfortunately, this approach fails to identify a substantial number of children with these heart defects, either due to the technological limitation of ultrasound or the fact that these children often do not show any signs or symptoms of heart problems before leaving the hospital. Sadly, for some infants, the critical heart defect is not diagnosed until it's too late. What can be done to prevent this? Pulse oximetry is a readily available, non-invasive, and painless technology that can be incorporated into the routine assessment of newborns at the bedside. It is already currently used in hospitals to detect low levels of oxygen in patients with lung problems, but it can also be used to detect critical heart defects in newborns, that is, in children who have problems pumping blood to the lungs to get oxygen. And if I might, I'd like to show you a quick example of how this can be used. This is a standard pulse oximetry machine that is used. It's readily available. Any hospital that's going to treat any person who has low level of oxygen is going to have a pulse oximeter. It should be on. And I simply put it on my finger here. And start searching for a pulse. Hopefully I have one. Happy to screen any representatives afterwards. And they're tracking it right now. I can't do it when it's backwards. Okay. And I've used this probe many times. I'm just going to change out the probe, but I'm going to keep talking while I do that. So what are the potential costs of using pulse oximetry to screen for congenital heart defects? Can you just open that? Or I'll get it real quick because it takes 2 seconds. Factoring the cost of pulse oximetry, the follow-up testing that would be required. Oh, I got my pulse now. There it is. It was this machine not going. Okay, there it is. It's tracking. So simple machine looking. I can't see on there. see it from there. Okay. But it gives the simple machines at the bedside. I'm trying to use the newborn probe on me, and it's a little hard to do that. But it will give you a simple oxygen saturation at the bedside. Estimated time for this entire process is less than 2 minutes. It can be done at the same time as the current existing newborn hearing screen. So I'll change that out later if I need to. But factoring in all the costs, the latest estimates are that pulse oximetry as a tool to detect critical congenital heart defects costs less than $4 per infant screened. Furthermore, in our healthcare environment, we often talk about the cost to save 1 year of life. For pulse oximetry, the estimated costs are less than $5,000 per life year saved. The arbitrarily accepted number for cost-effective intervention in the United States is roughly $50,000 per life year saved. So in other words, screening newborns with pulse oximetry is a cheap way to save lives. So what is the status of pulse oximetry screening in the United States and Georgia? Well, as you heard, in 2010, a proposal to add pulse oximetry testing for critical congenital heart defects as part of the National Recommended Uniform Screening Panel was put forward to the HHS Advisory Committee on Heritable Disorders in Newborn and Children. And as a result, an expert working group with members from around the country was convened to review the existing evidence on pulse oximetry and to make a recommendation regarding its potential implementation. This working group, consisting of pediatric cardiologists, pediatricians, nurses, epidemiologists, and economists, recommended in favor of pulse oximetry. And this recommendation was adopted in September 2011. Furthermore, this recommendation was strongly endorsed by the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Heart Association, the American College of Cardiology, and the March of Dimes. Many states around the nation now are moving to incorporate pulse oximetry screening into their routine screening panels. New Jersey, Maryland, Indiana, and Alabama have already done so via state legislation or regulation. In Georgia, even without legislation, some hospitals are starting to implement screening on their own. They find that the costs are not prohibitive for them to do it. In fact, just 12 days ago, there was a child in Habersham County who was diagnosed with a critical congenital heart defect as a result of pulse oximetry screening. He was, we consider, a save. That child was transported to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, where he had his corrective surgery performed last week. It works. In summary, pulse oximetry screening is a cheap, easy, and readily available test that holds tremendous promise to reduce the morbidity and mortality caused by critical congenital heart defects in newborn infants in Georgia. On behalf of the American Academy of Pediatrics and Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, I strongly urge you to pass House Bill 745. Madam Chairman, that concludes my testimony, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions from the committee? Okay, Representative Kidd.
Not a question. I commend everybody for this, and at the proper time, Madam Chairman, there's no opposition at the proper time.
Not the proper time yet. Okay. Who? Representative Purcell. Ms. Randall's got hers going.
Look, it's mine.
Oh, Representative Maddox.
Doctor, why is this not being used? How long has it been available?
So pulse oximetry is a technology that's been around for about 20 years or so, and then over the last 10 years or so there's been, a lot of interest in using this for congenital heart defects. It is certainly already used in hospitals to diagnose children who are symptomatic. If a child comes in with a breathing problem or doesn't look right, they're going to get a pulse oximetry test. The goal here is for children who look perfectly well to have this pulse oximetry performed. The studies and the data just were not there in the last 10 years ago, but over the last 5-6 years, study after study has been adding to the data, to the knowledge base, so that now it's felt that this is an appropriate usage of resources and is effective, cost-effective, and medically effective for use in asymptomatic individuals.
And probably pretty soon, Dr. Maddox, they'll have some kind of a little tiny thing you can fit on the puppy dog fingers to see if they have heart. Right. Dr. Maddox is a veterinarian. So,
excellent.
Thank you. Representative Randall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering what's the cost of it? I mean, adding it to the panel, is
right. So there are a number of issues to take into account for the cost. As I said, the latest data, this is data that came out of CDC, was just under $4 per infant screened. And that the primary cost is once you have this equipment, it can be used over and over and over again on the babies. The other costs are the echocardiograms to follow up, the transport, and that analysis took into account all of that. So it's relatively cheap. And as I said, many hospitals have already decided that they're going to do it because they already have the technology there. It's not a big cost for them to go ahead and start implementing it.
Is it recommended that there be a follow-up after like a certain age or so? Because I've known of children that all males too, for some reason, that have had some type of undetectable heart defect and just dropped dead at like 13 or.
Right, and that's certainly a concern. So this tool is powered to detect, as you heard, 7 specific types of critical congenital heart defects, and those are the ones that require intervention shortly after birth. The kids that we're talking about are the ones who look well shortly after they're born. They go home, and in the first week of life, the newborn's going under a number of hemodynamic changes. There's a vessel that's open, actually closed. Without getting too specific, that's when they're at home and they're not in the hospital and they can't be seen to have the problems. And this will detect that beforehand. What you're talking about in the adolescents and older kids, that is another type of heart defect for which there are other people who are trying to find a good screening modality for that but have not yet. This is different from that.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Reinders.
Madam Chair, and thank you so much for this legislation. You quoted a lot of statistics, and I got to be honest with you, I'm trying to, what's the purpose of the study? Because you already know if you want it. You got the data.
We do have the data, but we don't have all of the data, and it needs to be looked at from the department's position, and we think that that's the better place to examine it, for them to work on it and examine it. And this bill is not creating any mandate. It's just simply looking at this to see what those costs would be. Is there a cost benefit? And then also looking at what is the health benefit.
And again, I apologize. I just want to dig down into because I'm in favor of this, I think, in terms of doing the screening. $4 sure seems to be a small price for potential prevention. But you know best practices. You know what's going on in other states. You've quoted that. You've got 350 born in Georgia each year, I think was a statistic that was given. 1 in 100 in the U.S., half detected, and all this kind of good stuff. Yes, I'm just, again, trying to figure out why we're not coming up with a mechanism to put it on the panel instead of going through the whole process, because you know when it says here, come back with a recommendation, I think we all know the recommendation is going to be we need it.
Cindy Reinders, maybe they were trying to give us another year to get out of our severe financial problems and hoping that the economy would turn around and be a little bit better before we.
All right, and we'll get at that point what it will cost the state then, correct?
Correct.
All right, and finally, Madam Chair, if I may, on one other further question, since you referenced Habersham County, have you done will part of the study be how many of these hospitals can afford to go ahead and do it on their own?
There's already surveys that I know about that the Department of Public Health is trying to investigate which hospitals are implementing it already to see what the capacity is and what the needs are.
That seems like
so
a perfect thing for the foundation and the Women's League, and because we do a lot of that stuff at the local level, you know, with our Lights of Love and things of this nature, and I just was wondering if you've looked at that option.
That's what we're hoping the department will look at, and that's why we want to put it in their hands to do this, as opposed to us doing it as legislatures. Have those experts look at it and give us back the recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Reinders. Representative Beverly.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have a quick question about line 33. It says birthing facilities. Can that be extended to include sort of midwives who do, you know, sort of home deliveries? Would it also include them?
I think at the point that there is a recommendation for how to implement, I think that's where we need to let the department give us some guidance on that. I'm certainly not qualified to craft the kind of bill that would, that would address that. I think we need to see what the cost would be. But in the studies that we've read, typically what happens is there's a special set aside for home deliveries.
Right. And there is somebody from the department here to hear that suggestion, Representative Beverly. Representative Pack.
It's unplugged. I think Representative Reinders kind of covered it. The question is regarding the study for the Department of Public Health. Has there been an appropriation for the study, or is it going to cost any money to the department to do this?
I've spoken with the department, and they don't anticipate the cost being significant at all, and so we're going to rely on them to tell us. I think that there's a will to look at this and to examine it from their perspective. So as far as any fiscal impact, I don't know what that would be in terms of doing the study, and I've not asked for one.
And Representative Pack, there is money out there until we moved the Public Health Department out of DCH to where it made it a division of its own. People were not going after grants, and I do know that they are actively now pursuing grant money, and this is the kind of thing that is often, that doesn't guarantee that they'll get a grant if they apply for it, but I know that they are actively pursuing grant money to help cover the cost of anything they do over there. Do you have another, do you have another question or anything? Okay, Representative Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Representative Welch, I just applaud you on bringing this to us. I mean, this is maybe addressing Representative Rinder's thoughts on this with, this is evolving technology. Know that though the pulse oximetry has been around for decades now, you know, testing newborns and the recommendations of Secretary Sebelius is new, and that's why you're bringing that to us. Certainly it does look cost effective. The pulse oximetry leads to an echocardiogram, I presume, and in small communities that may be an issue, and that's part of the issue that we're addressing with this evaluation. And I'll second Representative Kidd's motion when the time is appropriate.
Well, we have a couple more people that would like to. Thank you, Doctor, for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We have a couple more physicians that want to speak. In the matter of time, I don't want to cut through if you prepared something, but if you can hit the high points, and we would appreciate it and not repeat what somebody else has already done. Dr. Sexton, unless questions that have been asked, you need to clarify on them. I don't want to cut you short. That's really terrible, but
no, that's okay. I can be very fast.
And nice to see you again.
I'm Bill Sexton. I'm a neonatologist here in Atlanta. I work primarily at Grady and at Emory Midtown. First of all, I wanted to thank you all. As one of the past presidents of the Georgia chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, this committee has been one of the ones that consistently has done the right thing for kids, and I just wanted to start off by thanking you all for that. As you ask, I won't repeat things. I just wanted a couple of high points to make. CHD, the other name for that is that you may have heard kind of in the lay press is blue baby. And you know that's something that's particularly bad. Let me give you a little story about a blue baby that I happened to see week before last. I was I'm working in the nursery at Emory Midtown right now, and I was called by the term nursery doc to see a baby that was breathing kind of at the upper end of the normal range, but otherwise a nice term baby that no problem was anticipated. We put the pulse ox on the child because it's something that, at least in that hospital, that we're doing routinely. The pulse ox was low. I got cardiology to take a look at the baby, and in fact the baby had both pulmonary hypertension and a hole between the two receiving chambers of the heart, so that virtually within an hour or two of the time we picked up the low pulse ox, I was able to get that baby on treatment. And at this point, the problem that was causing the high blood pressure in the lungs is resolved, and the child just needs routine cardiac follow-up. So this just current story, it does work. A couple of things that I think that are important to think about. We've already heard testimony that 350 kids in the state of Georgia die every year from or are diagnosed with this disease. The last time you all flew to Washington, D.C. or someplace, you probably flew on a 757. It's one of the more common jets that leave Atlanta. That has a capacity of about 180 to 200 people. That's 2 of those jets going down every year. That's the number of kids in the state that this would pick up if we were doing that. Last thing, just because you were interested in the cost of this, I did just a little back of the envelope calculation. In 2010, there were 128,000 deliveries in the state of Georgia. Of those, about 58% were Medicaid babies. If you take that number, 60%, 58% of 128,000, multiply it by $4 a test, the cost to Medicaid would be about $350,000. This is really cost effective. I think that's a relatively low price to pay for the kind of disease that we're talking about. So that in summation, I'd like to thank you all for considering this bill. I think it's really important, and actually one thing just to think about, because you've heard that both the American Academy of Pediatrics and the CDC have recommended this as a guideline. It's already a tacit standard. What happens in hospitals where we're not doing it? What happens in those is there going to be a problem that we need to address with tort reform? So just think about that as the flip side of this. At any rate, I strongly support the passage of this bill.
Thank you, Dr. Sexton. I have one question for you, not related to this. Please tell me, as all the changes have gone on at Grady, and we do appreciate that, we no longer have any baggies working as humidifiers in the neonatal nursery. And that's how bad Grady was before before people stepped in the community and the wonderful community of Atlanta and surrounding areas.
Things are doing much better at Grady, and the new CEO, if you all don't know about servant leadership, one of the things he's lectured on nationally is servant leadership. It is a phenomenal concept, and he is really just a super guy. I think that we're really looking at a new era for what goes on with the care of the indigent in our urban population.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Dr. Sexton? Well, we appreciate everything that's happening in Grady, and for those that you didn't know, in the incubators, they actually had baggies with little tiny holes so that they could get humidity to these newborn babies because they couldn't afford new ones. And it has drastically changed, and hopefully that will be a field trip that we will take as a committee to see the changes at Grady. It is now, I'd say, I always thought it was top-notch for medical care. It is now top-notch, I think, moving for patient care.
An invitation, if you all have not been to our new neuroscience unit, it looks like Star Trek. It is unbelievable. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Really, you'll like it a lot. It looks like Star Trek.
Dr. Bonk? Okay. Got one more.
I'm Dr. Catherine Bonk,
Okay.
and I'm representing the Georgia OBGYN Society in support of this bill. We're 100% behind it. I'm a practicing OBGYN in Decatur, and this would make our lives a lot easier and make us a lot more comfortable sending moms home in a reasonable time fashion. I can't promise savings, but it might even result in some cost savings. So, thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay. Do we have questions for Representative Welch before we take a motion on this bill? No questions. Representative Kidd.
I can make a motion to pass.
Okay, we have a motion to pass. Do I hear a second from Dr. Watson? To pass. Okay, we have a motion and a, pardon? Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a technical amendment.
Oh, okay. All right, hold on. We have a motion to pass, and I'll take the amendment now. We'll vote on it first.
In line 47 of the bill, after the word Georgia, is there supposed to be a period?
In Georgia.
There's supposed to be one, yes.
All right.
Thank you very much for that case. Are you taking over Representative Hardin's place this year, Representative Pack?
Sorry?
Are you taking over Representative Hardin's place?
No, I'm on code revision. I'm trying to save myself work.
Okay.
Thank you.
I heard a second. Is there any objections to Representative Pack's amendment? Thank you very much. I'm considering that there's no objection, so that's it. Is there any other further discussion? All right. Pardon? Oh, yes. Thank you very much. We'll restate the motion please, Representative Kidd, restate the motion as amended.
Yes, ma'am. I move that the Health and Human Resource Committee do pass House Bill 745 as amended.
As amended. Do you have a second on that, Dr. Watson? Yes. Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing no one with discussion, everyone in favor of the passage of House Bill 745 as amended, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you to everyone that took their time to come and speak on the bill. Moving on. Representative Mitchell, House Bill 673. Representative Mitchell, I would like for you to go through the bill briefly for us, and that, and then I'm not going to take questions for you. I'm going to let the people that are with you speak, and then we'll take questions to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I bring before you but Madam Chair, before I go, let me just state that this bill that you have before you is a collaborative effort. Many long hours of conversation, study, many resources have went into this, and I must say that Madam Chair Cooper, as well as Representative Valerie Clark, their fingerprints and their thoughts and their work are certainly all in this legislation. I think most of you realize that if it were not, we would not be in this position right now. So I just wanted to let you know what a collaborative effort that this was, and I do appreciate it so very much. Concussions are one of the most commonly reported injuries in children and adolescents who participate in sports and recreational activities. Concussions result from blows or motions to the head or body that causes the brain to move rapidly inside the skull. They are long-term symptoms and conditions associated with post-concussions. Some youth athletes are prematurely returned to play, potentially or actually causing injury or even death. This proposed bill provides a uniform education, training, and return to play protocol. Hence, we have titled this Georgia's Return to Play Act of 2012. If you will, the proposed law provides that a local board of education and the governing board of education, public and non-public elementary school, middle school, and high school will provide pertinent information to coaches, officials, youth athletes, parents, and of course legal guardians, I should say, which will highlight the nature and risks of these types of injuries. They will require each coach and official of a youth athletic activity to complete an annual education course. It will require, as a condition of participation, that each youth athlete and the youth athlete's parent or legal guardian sign an information sheet. It also provides concussion recognition education course shall include information about the aforementioned. It also provides that the Department of Health shall endorse or make available one or more concussion recognition courses or provide referrals for public and non-public schools for information, recreation facilities, and athletic leagues. And I might add at this point that the Department of Health has fully endorsed this bill and said they are most willing and able to do this at, believe it or not, no cost or no additional cost to what they're doing now. The proposed law also requires that if a youth athlete is removed from play for suspicion of a concussion or a brain trauma, the coach shall notify the athlete's parent or legal guardian and shall permit the athlete to return to play or participate in any supervised team activities involving physical exertion, including games, competition, etc., based on the evaluation by a health care provider. The proposed law also provides that a licensed athletic trainer can manage the athlete's graduated return to play. I will also direct your attention to line 128 in the bill, which is what we call a hold harmless clause, which does not place any additional liabilities on any of the participants for following the provisions of this bill. Actually, I'm reading from LC 334565S.
That's it. It is the sub.
And it is the sub. It's the committee sub, as I said, as the work of the many members of this committee, and certainly Madam Chair Cooper and Representative Clark. We've got some outstanding speakers that will be coming up, and I certainly look to answer any questions that you may have on it. I think this will be a great thing that we can do for Georgia. This is a protocol that has been adapted in many states. Certainly Georgia needs to be brought up to current conditions, and certainly we need to protect our youth that play sports. Madam Chair, I think you have a list of people who are
I do.
Asked to speak here.
And is there any certain order that you want them to go in, or just as they're signed up? Okay, we have 4 players from the Falcons. Would you gentlemen, do you want to come together and sit at the desk in the front and pass it back and forth, or one at a time, whatever you want to do? Or stand up here and just take your turns, tell us who you are, and thank you again.
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I'll make an opening statement and then I'll introduce the sturdy gentleman behind me. Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Kenneth Edmonds and I am the Director of Government Relations and Public Policy for the National Football League. On behalf of Commissioner Roger Goodell, I thank Chairwoman Cooper for holding today's hearing, as well as Representative Mitchell for sponsoring this legislation, and all of those that contributed and collaborated in the drafting of this important legislation. I appreciate this opportunity to testify. The NFL, as well as the Atlanta Falcons, strongly support Georgia's Return to Play Act of 2012. The bill will help to prevent preventable brain injuries and make sports and recreational activities safer for youth athletes throughout the state. The league has strict return to play guidelines that apply to some of the best athletes in the world, and we believe that a similar approach is necessary when dealing with some of the youngest athletes, and this legislation does that. After all, children and teens are more likely to get a concussion and take longer to recover than adults. Yet a recent study estimated that more than 40% of high school athletes return to participate in school athletics before they have fully recovered from these brain injuries. That is why the NFL, along with leaders in medicine, education, and sports, who you will hear from later this afternoon, strongly is promoting the adoption of youth concussion measures similar to the 2009 Zachary Leistet law adopted in the state of Washington. That law was named for Zachary Leistet, who at age 13 returned prematurely to a middle school football game after sustaining an undiagnosed concussion. He sustained further life-threatening head blows during the second half. At the end of that game, he collapsed in his father's arms and lapsed into a coma. Zachary survived but continues to face a long road of rehabilitation. Our efforts today are inspired not only by Zach's story but also by his courage. We want to prevent the young people in this state and their families from enduring the kind of suffering and pain that Zach and his family endured. This bill, like the Zachary Leistet law, contains 3 core principles: concussion education for youth athletes, their parents and coaches, immediate removal of a youth athlete who is suspected of sustaining a concussion, and mandatory evaluation and clearance of that youth athlete by a licensed healthcare provider who is trained in the evaluation and management of concussions before returning to play or practice. Since 2009, as the representative stated, 31 states as well as the District of Columbia have passed Leistet laws, including North Carolina, Virginia, Louisiana, and Alabama. Last month, Commissioner Goodell and NCAA President Mark Emmert sent a letter to Governor Deal urging him to support youth sports concussion legislation in this state, and I request that that letter be included in today's record. This bill will make sports and recreational activities better by making them safer. It will ensure that a youth athlete who sustains a concussion has the necessary time to heal and recover and will not be at risk of further, more serious injury and an even longer, more difficult recovery. It also will help to reinforce on Georgia's playing fields the same rule governing NFL football fields. And that rule is this: that the medical decisions of healthcare professionals take precedence over the playing decisions of coaches and players. Parents, coaches, and school officials will benefit from this law, and most importantly, so will Georgia's kids. And the NFL believes that this is a winning game plan. Madam Chair, thank you for this opportunity to testify. I'm accompanied this afternoon and in this effort by a few players who are part of our team and effort to pass this important bill, and I would like to introduce them with your permission. Andrew Jackson, an offensive lineman who just completed his rookie season. Kevin Cohn, a wide receiver who also completed his rookie season, and he grew up right here in Georgia and went to school at Georgia Tech. Matt Bryant, who is entering his third season as the Falcons kicker. He just completed his 10th season in the league. Matt, thank you. And also a former player who is also prepared to testify this afternoon, Buddy Curry, who played 8 seasons as a standout linebacker with the Falcons. He was the 1980 Defensive Rookie Player of the Year, as well as a 2-time All-Pro selection. I introduce Buddy Curry.
Well, thank you, all of you gentlemen, for coming. And thank you very much for taking your time to be here. And any of you, besides Mr. Curry, want to say anything? Curry, it'd be fine. Go ahead.
He forgot to say that I'm the youngest member of the group. My name is Buddy Curry. I'm the current executive director and co-founder of Kids and Pros, a youth organization that focuses on character-based camps and clinics for kids ages 7 through 13. On behalf of Atlanta Falcons, I'm pleased to testify this afternoon in support of Georgia's Return to Play Act of 2012. I was born in Greenville, North Carolina. I went to school at University of North Carolina along with Lawrence Taylor. We had quite a lot of talent at that time at University of North Carolina, which is a basketball school. After graduation, I went on to play for the Atlanta Falcons from 1980 to 87. I was Defensive Rookie of the Year. I led the team in tackles every year, and I was also captain a few years as well. We try to forget a lot of those years, many of us. Like many professional athletes, I had several injuries and I think most importantly, concussions. I can remember coming off the field in a daze and trying to find out which sideline was my own, and coming to the sidelines where I saw my coach's face, I saw the medical, the trainer's face, and at the same time knowing that my team needed me back on the field. And my only thought was, give me some smelling sauce so I can at least be clear enough to get back on the field at the time. And so after maybe 1 or 2 plays, I was back on the field. And that's kind of how things were done back in the day. But I know that as a result of the advancements in medical science and the continuing work of the medical experts, and today's NFL athletes are a lot better educated. And they know a lot more about the health and safety than my teammates and I did when I first came into the league, and especially and particularly about concussions and the protocol and other brain injuries. As someone who's devoted to teaching and developing young people, I believe that the same medical knowledge should be available to youth sports that is available to the NFL players. There's an abundance of information and for youth coaches and different coaches are available on several websites. USAfootball.com is one of those, where youth players and coaches and their parents can be educated on the symptoms and warning signs of concussions. And I believe that one of the major advantages of having a state law in this issue is it will educate players and parents at the high school and also the youth level with risk of concussions. There's a lack of knowledge regarding these head injuries among youth athletes and coaches of the bill. And if passed, it will raise awareness to help change the culture on these issues. I'm going to take a second just to explain youth sports, and particularly I'm talking about the youth level. You know, if you look at a funnel, down at the bottom of the funnel with all the kids that play football, or of course the NFL. And the NFL, they're very well trained. You have a lot of medical personnel, and the players are looked after. The level that has the least amount of coaches, the least amount of technical knowledge is the youth level. And we're talking about ages 7 through 14 and sometimes even going into high school. And that's where I think this bill can really impact the most amount of kids and help prevent head injuries and concussions. And then when I think about my particular career, it was a badge of honor to go out and play football and to be the toughest guy on the block. We got to change that culture, and we got to change it through education and with guys like me and my older cohort, my younger cohorts here, talking about lifelong injuries and the results of concussions and head injuries. There's one thing to be able to play with a sprained ankle or some type of injury, but the concussions is a whole nother ballgame where there's a long-term risk. And here's another important thing. It's important that the appropriate medical personnel, rather than the parent, coach, or young athletes themselves, make a decision on when it's okay for the player to go out and play. I know myself, I would have gone out and played, regardless what probably most people would have said. They would have had to rope me down. This bill ensures that it happens where the proper people are making the decisions, and I urge members of this committee to support it. Thank you for allowing me to express my views. I'm pleased to be here in the state capitol and do whatever I can to help that this legislation is passed into law. I'm pleased to take any questions from the panel.
Okay. All right. Representative Reinders.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as someone who's...
Well, wait a minute. Let me ask just a second. Do any of the other players want to say something? If you do, I'll bring Mr. Curry back, and if you want to say something, or if not, let you sit down. Go ahead.
I'm a father of 7, so I have ranging from 14 down to 5-month-old twins. And I also lost a son to 3 months to SIDS. What we're doing here, anything to benefit these kids, and even the bill we were talking about earlier, that's a good thing. But anything we can do to make the life better and improve it for the young ones, I'm all for it, and I think we all should be. As a kid, I remember 10 or 11 years old, going through and making a hit. Now, this is back when I used to play instead of just kicking the ball. But I can remember after one play getting up, seeing the sky was a shade of yellow, and there was green dots. Now, I didn't know that I had a concussion at that time, but, if I had known then, luckily nothing ever happened to me after that. Or in high school, playing weeks with a headache. And, I probably had a concussion, but I didn't know it. But just the whole education part of this, I think is very important for the kids and for the parents as well. And then the adults that are taking care of our kids out there on the playing field. So, like I said, being a parent of 7, always looking out for the best for the kids is, is very important. So just something to take in consideration. Thanks.
Okay. I don't want y'all standing too long. Gentlemen, do y'all want to say anything else, or you just want to sit down? I mean, you're welcome to speak. Okay, why don't y'all have a seat, and I'll bring Mr. Curry back up and grill him. And Mr. Edmonds, thank you again for flying in. And for the NFL, be about not just playing a sport, making money, but caring about what happens to athletes at all age. So I'm appreciative of that. I didn't maybe. I said you have questions, Ms. Curry. You're not off the hot seat. Mr. Reinders.
Thank you, Madam
Yes,
Chair. This is really at some point going to be aimed towards, as a person who's coached many levels and understands that logistically sometimes it's harder to implement, and we got to make sure our language is correct. I'm going to ask the author of the bill to work with me on that. I had a question for the gentleman here. I'm trying to think back, and I can't even remember, week 14, week 15 with Mr. McCoy in Cleveland, where the staff of the Cleveland Browns had problems recognizing their own player that had a concussion and sent him back in. Is my memory serving me right? If medical people at the NFL, review that for the benefit, because I'm not smart enough, review that for the benefit of the members of the committee.
Sure. I think you have the basic facts correct. There was a player that sustained a concussion. He came to the sidelines and should have been removed from play at that point. That was a mistake by the NFL medical staff. We are constantly evaluating our rules, and as a result of that incident, we have additional precautions that have been put in place, including now in every game we have certified athletic trainers that can serve as extra eyes for the medical staff and alert the medical staff when they have witnessed something that looks like a incident that has resulted in a concussion by a player. That was something that, quite frankly, we are not proud of, but like I said, we are constantly evaluating what we do and how we can do it better.
Thank you so much for that honest answer, and I want the board to make sure, or the committee to make sure that they heard that the NFL, because none of us are perfect, at times makes mistakes, and we're about to put this to my friend Mr. Mitchell, we're about to put this in the community level where volunteer fathers and mothers, and when Coach Ed can't make it, and I look at my 17-year-old son Matthew and I go, listen, I'm going to need you by the 4th inning, you better get there. Because if the Cleveland Browns can miss it, they did, right?
That's correct. Well,
then I just want to say, when we get ready to look at this bill, I appreciate that. When we get ready to look at this bill, let's talk about the practical applications and how it fits everyday society.
Representative, you raise a good point, and that's why the first provision of this bill is to raise everyone's awareness, not only the youth athlete, but also the coaches and the school personnel and the parents. We want everyone's eyes on these athletes so that they can be a witness and make sure when they see an incident that may have resulted in a concussion, that someone alerts the proper officials and makes sure that that youth athlete is removed immediately following the incident.
Thank you.
Also, Representative Reinders, I think that this is a recognition that medicine is an art, not a science.
Well, they're coming as experts, Madam Chair. In week 15, they told you they made a mistake.
No.
That's my point.
It wasn't.
And we're going to ask parents at home to be making those same kind of things mistake-free, and I get a little nervous about that. Since I voted for them, since they used to be on the sideline.
I finished what I was going to say. Representative Reinders, I think that that's why we have a hold harmless cause. When people are just trying to do the best they can and to the best of their ability help protect the children from concussions, and that was a big thing to put in. It's the only thing. And Representative Mitchell, do you have anything to add to that?
No, Madam Chair, I almost can't provide anything better than what you said there. I do appreciate Representative Reinders' his concern for volunteer parents and the like, and I know that he's also concerned about the kids. I will tell him that in the 31 states where this has been implemented, the legal liabilities, legal lawsuits as a result of youth injuries and the like have actually decreased. So this is certainly going to place our kids who play youth sports in a much better place, and I know that you do appreciate that.
Well, and I appreciate my committee's concern for the health of Georgians, and my vice chair is one of the most people best concerned. Are there other questions? Oh, Representative Maddox has a question for Mr. Curry.
Well, I was going to ask all these professional athletes, when you get a concussion and get hurt and you feel like you're okay and you want to go back in, does a medical doctor on your team, has he got the last say-so where you can or can't, or does a coach? Who makes this final decision if you're back pretty well stable?
Once they recognize that somebody's got dinged or whatever that case may be, they'll take your helmet from you, and they'll walk away. They'll hide it. There's numerous cases where guys are trying to get back on the field where, the precaution is more on the safety of the player. They probably are okay. They seem like they're okay, cognitive, to be able to go back in and to play, but they'll take their helmets and they'll hide it. And so the player cannot go back in because the professional doctor or trainer has made that case. And like a good example would be 2 years ago, 2009, when I first got here, I was on a play. The field goal was blocked, and then me and the holder, which was the punter at the time, we had to go make the tackle. He ended up getting a concussion. Now we avoided contact at all possible. Because we weigh so much and they weigh so much more than us, but he wasn't allowed to go back in the game. The punter, which was probably not going to see any more contact the rest of the game, which I end up having to punt. But that'd be a good example of looking out for the players.
Thank you very much, Representative Kidd.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank Mr. Mitchell for bringing this forward. Myself, having been an athlete at your school, Tennessee, a long time
I just
ago.
wish you'd stayed off that motorcycle.
And yes, ma'am, I should have. But as chairman of the Brain and Spinal Injury Trust Commission, I'm fully aware of the Georgians that we have over 40,000 concussions in Georgia per year. That's a lot. That seems like an astronomical number, but it's an accurate number, Madam Chair. And I appreciate y'all bringing this forward because I know the Brain and Spinal Trust Commission has been working with the doctors and folks up in Gainesville, Georgia, the last couple of years to try to bring something. I also want to comment that Mr. Curry, you were one tough dude. I've had season tickets from day one, and you were one tough dude. But as we get down into the bill, Madam Chairman, when is the proper time to look at legislation and try to help?
We're going to hear from them and then go back to the bill.
Thank you.
Representative Fullerton. Do you have a? Oh, is it Representative Watkins? Watkins. Yeah, it's my sidekick.
Madam Chairwoman, I had a question, not for them, but a question about on line 17. So I guess that you need to address that later.
Just hold on for it just a little bit. Who? Representative Pass. Okay, hold on. Okay, Representative Howard. Is it Howard? No. Oh. Okay. Go ahead. Pardon? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, and once again for coming. We have some other people want to talk about that were players, and it's not always about the boys in football. If we have one former cheerleader here, and we're going to hold that. I think it's probably time that we hear from somebody with a medical background that specializes in this, and Dr., and I'm going to say it wrong, Dr. Machaki, did I get it right? Can you come forward? Dr. Machaki's with the Shepherd Spinal Center, and I want, if you will relay back to Mrs. Shepherd, how much this community appreciates what she and her husband did and what they do for this community. Before we had the Shepherd Center, anybody who had a spinal injury, the closest place really to get good treatment, I believe, was Colorado. And that's pretty impossible for most Georgia families. And the Shepherd Center continues to be an outstanding leader in this field. So I hope you will tell her and send her my personal thanks and the thanks of the committee.
I sure will. I'm just going to keep this brief. I've been doing concussion research, sports concussion research, since probably the mid-'80s. And we've known since then about these injuries. And things have changed over the past 25 years. Not a lot has changed about the consequences of concussion. Studies now show just there's more data. I've worked at the University of Georgia. We have a concussion care path for our athletes. It's very resource heavy. We have a lot of athletic trainers. We have team physicians in every sport. We have a concussion care path from when the injury occurs to how players are returned to play. We have sophisticated equipment, balance testing, cognitive testing. We monitor our athletes. Our goal is really not to keep people out of play, but to help them to return safely and protect their health. We recommended probably about 10 years ago, it was on a CDC panel, some of the very issues that are addressed in this bill. Now, the CDC doesn't tell people what to do, but the issue that a healthcare provider should be involved and coaches should not be held responsible for making return to play decisions. That's not their job. So I think that in the past 25 years we've learned a whole lot. There's a lot of data out there. We know how many kids get concussions. When I talk to mothers and fathers, I know exactly what the risk is in every sport. Of course, the risk goes up. The more concussions you have, the risk of another one goes up. So I've looked at this. I would encourage you to give it serious consideration. It's something that there's plenty of information out there on now, not to mention a lot of state laws in other states. And so I think doing something for our young athletes would be a very, very helpful and positive thing. That's about it, unless you all have any questions.
Dr. Manchaki, I have one. Can you tell us why it's so important to prevent young people, and starting at a young age, from having repeated concussions? What do these repeated concussions do to the brain, and what are we finding are the long-term consequences to people in their 40s and early 50s from repeated concussions?
Well, a concussion is actually a brain injury. It's just a physiologic type change in brain function. So I don't think the science is definitive on how many concussions you can get. We usually start getting worried after 3. 3's start where the number starts to get worrisome. And there are players who get more concussions than that. I mean, I've seen players who've had, I hate to say it, 10, 12, 15 concussions. So, and the culture is different now. So I don't think we know for sure the definitive long-term consequences. But as you have, what happens is your risk gets increased for concussion. The symptoms last longer. And then you have all this morbidity associated with academic problems, behavior problems. So the idea that it's just about maybe some late life changes, which some players have shown, where they become maybe have an onset of dementia somewhat earlier in life. If they've ever would have had it, we don't really know yet. Football, especially, and other sports, are a contact sport. So there is a risk of concussion, and the idea is you manage that just like any other health problem, prudently, and give the athlete a chance to recover. We don't know how long cerebral metabolism is impaired. Some people think it could be as long as weeks and months, but your brain is not normal, as you heard when you go, when you're not figuring out which sideline you should go to. Your brain is not functioning properly. It's impaired. So unfortunately, we're going to find out a lot more about this because we're going to study it more. So morbidity is going to become much clearer. If we could prevent them completely, it would be good, but we can't.
There are indications now, am I right, about besides behavioral problems in school and young people and academic problems, are we not beginning to see some problems where we have early onset Alzheimer's disease and this kind of thing that they're beginning to maybe trace back? I know it's in the early stages of study.
Yes, ma'am. There are studies that have shown that some athletes have brains that look very, very different from normal and do end up with memory problems, early onset, a dementia-like syndrome. I don't know that there are plenty of athletes who don't show that as well. So, but it comes down to more is worse, and managing the ones when you have them is the most important thing.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions for Doug? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, who else have we got? Okay. Let's go to David Wright. Mr. Wright, tell us who you're with.
Hi, Madam Chair Cooper, and members of the committee. I'm David Wright, and I'm here as co-chair of the Georgia Concussion Coalition. I'm a practicing emergency physician and at Grady, as y'all were speaking about before. And by the way, any of you guys want to see the neuroscience unit, that's my home, and so I'm happy to take you through there in a personal tour. And it is rather amazing. But I've been involved in traumatic brain injury research for over 15 years. And I and all of my committee members and coalition members are deeply concerned about the short and long-term effects of concussion in our youth athletes. I'm honored to represent the Georgia Concussion Coalition, also called the GCC. We are a large group of concerned stakeholders from almost every district in Georgia, representing diverse disciplines. These include parents, businesses, business leaders, coaches, nurses, including school nurses, teachers, athletic trainers, physicians, and actually many large organizations are on our committee, including the Falcons, the NFL, local healthcare organizations, and other high school organizations. So we are a very large group, over 70 members strong, all across Georgia here today. The mission of the GCC is simple. It is to minimize the risk of concussions in children and athletes participating in organized athletics events in Georgia. Our aims are, one, promote education for athletes, parents, coaches, and administrators, healthcare providers, and the general public, and to assist in the development and dissemination of guidelines, policies, training, and educational materials. And here's why it matters to us. So the date is October 31st, 2010 in Kansas City. It was a clear, crisp evening. He was excited about this. This was his last game of his senior season. Many of you guys are already going to know who I'm talking about. This is Nathan Stiles. He was the homecoming king. He boasted a 4.0 average. He was arguably the best player on the team. There were high hopes for his future. This football season had been his best yet. With only one blemish, he had suffered a concussion in practice about a week before. But nothing was going to stop him from playing in this last game. And in all accounts, the game was a terrific game for him. He actually had already made 2 touchdowns, but his headache was getting worse. And moments later, he collapsed on the field. And after a short delay, he was taken to the emergency department, where within 6 hours, he succumbed and died of massive brain edema, also known as second impact syndrome. Ladies and gentlemen, while this true and tragic story represents the extreme, no doubt, it is a poignant reminder of why we are all here today talking about this. To protect our kids from what the CDC has described as the silent epidemic. The CDC estimates upwards of 3.8 million suffer a traumatic brain injury in the U.S. every year. Sports-associated concussions are a huge and major contributor to this figure. The real number of concussions actually, though, is unknown because, and is likely much higher, because the evidence remains hidden. Remember, concussions are not easy to recognize. There is no external wound. Individuals often can appear normal. Only recently has the science begun to catch up, and we now know the extent and scope of the short and long-term consequences. Just so we're all clear, and I think it was made as a statement before, a concussion is a brain injury, okay? We, the members of the GCC, are advocating for House Bill 673 and the promotion of the 3 core principles, really to recognize, remove, and refer. I won't go through those core principles again because Mr. Edmonds already went through them. And those are on record. It's not really clear whether Nathan Stiles and others like him could have been saved with this legislation. But had he gone through an appropriate graduated return to play evaluation, or had his family and his coach benefited from recognition education, he may be alive today. The time to act is now. We can no longer stand on the sidelines. So I urge you to pass this legislation and join the other actually 45 states who have either passed or introduced a bill similar to this.
Okay. Questions for the doctor? None? Okay.
That's it.
That's it. Stand by. We may have, anything like that later. Amanda Cook.
Madam Chair, committee members, my name is Amanda Cook, and I'm here on behalf of Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Children's Healthcare of Atlanta is supportive of measures that protect children from returning to play too soon. A concussion can happen at any time and in any sport. In 2011, Children's treated over 1,000 patients for concussions. This legislation will help to raise awareness around concussions and concussion management among coaches, parents, and young athletes. It is critical that any athlete with a concussion not return to play until they are symptom-free and have had the appropriate amount of time to rest, in order to avoid a second concussion or a more severe injury that can result in long-term problems. I thank you for your time, and I thank you, Representative Mitchell, for bringing this legislation forward.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you very much. Okay, and last but not least, Whitney Van Gundy. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have your name. I'm sorry. You could step up and introduce yourself. Didn't mean to overlook you. Tell us who you are.
I understood my name was on this. Madam Chair and Committee, I'm Ralph Swearingen, Executive Director of the Georgia High School Association and a member of the GCC. And Representative Mitchell, thank you very much for your willingness to work with us to get this thing started. My resume is not as stellar as those who have preceded me, but I do have a little bit to share. I'm in my 20th year of serving on the National Federation Football Rules Committee, which writes all the high school football rules. And in fact, I had the privilege of authoring the current rule on illegal helmet contact. Also, as a member of the Board of Directors of the National Federation, I've been involved in developing the educational piece that the National Federation has accomplished with the assistance of the CDC. If you're interested in taking a look at that 30-minute online tutorial, it is www.nfhslearn.com, or you can link to it through the GHSA. Basically, what I'm here to tell you is that we have, with one minor exception, a seamless meshing of this law and existing protocols that are in place. In fact, what this law will do will enhance and go beyond what we have. Essentially two pieces, the educational piece and the athletic piece. Right now, the Georgia High School Association strongly recommends that all coaches and officials go through the National Federation tutorial on concussion management, led by Dr. Mick Keister, a doctor out of Portland, Oregon, who chairs the National Sports Medicine Advisory Committee. Right now, I'm proud to say we've had over 4,000 high school coaches in a variety of sports participate in this online tutorial. Now you are going to mandate such a thing, and additionally, if this bill were to pass, you would now have parents and players getting information that they've not had before, and it really is going to help me. I guarantee you the Georgia High School Association cannot be at every practice and every game. But I tell you what, a concerned mama is going to let us know if the coach or someone else is letting someone go around the protocols. Our play protocols are very simple. Every national rule book published by the National Federation has the same concussion management protocol. And basically what it says, that at any point during the game, an official or a coach who observes a player who has signs and symptoms of a concussion are to remove that person from play immediately, and they are not to return to play until they have been cleared as not having a concussion by an appropriate healthcare professional. Now, we chose that word vaguely on purpose because after the Zachary Lystead law, each state in its law would specify who it is that's going to be the approved healthcare professional to go back to return to play. So we do have this. It's not just in football. It's in every single sport. You're removed. You can't come back into play. Our key motto is, when in doubt, keep them out. And so that's what we're trying to work with. Obviously, when we have a game, we have officials, we have coaches, we usually have a team doctor, we have EMTs at those games. Our concern that we're trying to change the culture by raising the consciousness of our coaches is at practices. And one of the reasons why I'm pleased that we're not stopping with the high school is because of the fact that we have some evidence in the literature to show us that the younger the student, the more vulnerable they are to these problems. And because they don't have good oversight, the more we can educate and the more we can say, when in doubt, keep them out till they get taken care of. That's what we want to do. The only thing that I have a small concern over is the aspect in line 135. and that is the concussion vital signs developed by CNS. Here are my concerns about it, and you can disregard them, if you don't. There's conflicting data in the research. You know how it is when you read one doctor says this and they have the same pedigree, says just the opposite. There's some data that maybe these impact testing situations where you do a baseline test and then you later, if a student is thought to have a concussion, you compare their EKG with the first one, that may not be always valid because the development of adolescents are such that there is an ongoing rapid change and a lot of things going on in their lives. And yet we have no problem with people doing it. We have several school districts in Metro Atlanta that do this. If you want to do it, that's fine, but to mandate it could be a problem. We also have a concern about the unequal nature of getting this kind of service. I think it's tied into the PPE, the physical exam, to say that this baseline testing should be done with every child who is going to participate when they take their PPE. Couple of problems with that. Number one, medical doctors across the state of Georgia are not as willing to do the free physicals for kids that they used to do because we are demanding more information on family health history and other things. So therefore, I get concerned about the economic issues that are going to be involved with some of our students in some parts of the state. Also geography. If you are in some remote South Georgia or North Georgia metro counties, what is it going to take to get you to doctors who would be able to do that? Again, that's a minor thing that I'm sure you can either say that's the benefits outweigh the problems, but generally the Georgia High School Association is supportive of this bill as the substitute bill. Are there any questions?
Okay, we have questions. Okay, Representative Mitchell.
Well stated, Mr. Swearingen. My only problem is I wish we had gotten with you earlier because that minor fix we could have addressed and then not, I should say, contaminate the committee's thinking on that particular issue because I agree with you. That issue is one that is more minor in its nature than substantive. As a matter of fact, Madam Chair, we can talk about how we can address that issue.
I think I'd like to have Dr. Dr. Blue Shirt come back up again and tell us what where's my list? Sorry, there's my list. Who did I miss? Which, Dr. Ellis? No. Dr. Wright, how do you feel about the testing from a medical point of view?
We would actually recommend that starting at line 135, that section could be removed without harming the overall intent of the bill. Would not specify that the preseason would have to be done at this time. I think at some point that may be a good idea, but right now I'm not sure that we're there yet.
Right.
And certainly we would be in agreement with that.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Right.
I do agree with the good doctor.
Okay.
And
thank you.
we'll always have an opportunity to revisit this issue.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Swearingen. Mr. Swearingen. Thank you
Mr.
very
Swearingen.
much. Okay. Last but not least, Whitney Van Gundy.
I believe I'm on the list there. Jim Ellis.
Okay.
Jim Ellis, Mothers for Concussion.
You are. Thank you. I seem to not. Maybe I've had a concussion on the way to work today. I don't seem to be able to. It's a very long list today. I seem to be skipping people. I apologize. It is not on purpose.
Madam Chairman and honorable representatives. Hi, I am Whitney Van Gundy. I'm a junior at Norcross High School, and I'm a varsity competition and football cheerleader. On September 14th, 2011, my squad and I were warming up for a homecoming pep rally that was to take place shortly. Unfortunately, during the pyramid, my bases dipped at different times while turning around to the front. This action left me to fall from high up, and I landed headfirst on our gym floor because my back spot accidentally grabbed my legs and upended me. My school sport director insisted that I sit out the rest of the night and that I didn't perform. But since my love and dedication for the sport is so strong, I begged him to let me perform, and I promised him I wouldn't do anything I didn't feel I could do or that I wasn't comfortable with. Due to the fact that I continued to perform our routine and cheer the rest of the pep rally, I ended up feeling even worse than I had. I took my impact test the very next day, and my results told me I would be out for possibly 1 to 2 months. If it hadn't been required that my squad take the impact test to receive our baselines at the beginning of the year, I would have never known how serious my concussion truly was. I took the test 4 to 5 times before the trainer requested I go to the doctor because a couple of my scores had begun to decrease. When my scores were back up to my baselines, I was allowed to begin my rehab. At the end of all of this, I was out for a total of 2 months. So I am here today to inform you of how important I believe it is for this bill to be passed. I have learned through this experience that athletes are at risk of much greater problems or even death if they return to competition too early and are re-injured. I believe the state of Georgia should require impact tests to be taken by all cheerleaders and other athletes that could hit their heads. One of my best friends is on our varsity basketball cheer squad, and she recently got a concussion. They didn't have any baselines for her, so they're not completely sure of how serious her concussion was. By passing this bill, it could save lives of not only the dedicated cheerleaders, but of all of the dedicated athletes in Georgia. My parents made this helmet for me right before, my first competition back, so it kind of means a lot to me. And thank you for having me here today. It is quite an honor, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Whitney? Oh.
Thank you, Representative. You're welcome.
Okay, Representative Clark.
Madam Chairman, is it not true that this impact test could be of low cost? And Dr. Swearingen, I am always in such awe of you. I have been a high school principal for years, and of course you were the person who we always went to, and you were the man with the answers. And I wonder if it could possibly be looked at and talk to you and get some ideas to solidify this in this bill before we move on with it. But is it not true, Madam Chairman, that the cost is low if there's an initial output of, say, $500 by a booster club or by the school? The cost to the student or, again, to the school is a little more than $1, probably $1.50 for each child taking this test. Could be done in a group and only for children who are in contact sports.
Well, I think didn't you tell me that it is a test that's done on the computer, that the doctor doesn't have to do it? And
That's not true.
Okay.
Let me
Would you like to come to the podium and we'll end with you?
do it this way. Thank you. Let me introduce myself.
Well,
You can't hear me?
Okay. Are there any other questions for Whitney or any comments?
Whitney? Madam Chairman?
Yes. Sorry.
If I may ask one
Yes.
more question of Whitney, ma'am. Whitney, did you take your cognitive test on the computer?
Yes, ma'am. All of the times I've taken the test has been on the computer.
Okay.
And it's a series of 6 tests that test your memorization of colors, shapes, and letters and words, and they do reaction tests as well.
Is it not true it tests, Madam Chairman, verbal memory, visual memory, reaction time, attention, all those things that would be included with a concussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, thank you.
Okay. Representative Pack, I think you have a question of Whitney. Whitney, don't go away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Van Gundy, for coming testifying. Question about the incident that you told us about related to your cheerleading activities at a pep rally, right?
Yes, sir.
That wasn't at a game or a competition setting, right? Okay,
No.
thank you.
Yep. Okay. All right. Whitney, thank you so much for coming to talk to us. Yes, just go back, sure.
I want to clarify. It is not that impact testing is bad. It is the fact that sometimes people put too much faith and stock in one particular thing, and especially if you read the marketing on it, you have a tendency to do that. Impact testing, in conjunction with other things, especially with doctors, face-to-face visits and things of that sort, probably is a better thing. And recommending it would be great. The concern I had was mandating it and possibly the problems you get into by naming a specific group in a law, whether you intend it to be that way or not, it's kind of like this has the seal of approval of the legislature on it. That's all I was saying.
Who's got a question? Okay. Wait a minute. I'm sorry, you left too soon.
Oh, sir, and Madam Chairman, if I could add, we would certainly discuss this with you, and I know that COG Sport and CRI and Impact are all sorts of measures that need to be mentioned, not one test. I certainly agree with you, sir.
Exactly.
I think, and if you've read the piece of legislation, it says such as. It does not mandate either one of those. It was just trying to apparently.
I just assume that people are like the people that I deal with day in and day out, and if you put something just casually in your communications, it suddenly gets the standard.
Right, but how else would you describe something like that? To not name it, how would you describe it?
Computerized cognitive testing.
Computerized
cognitive testing.
Computerized cognitive testing.
That would be very, very well done.
Computerized. Okay. Dr. Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
You need him back up there. He keeps sitting down.
No, it's good. The same on the same topic. You know, the physical exam's usually done by the physician, and then but most of us that do those physical exams, whether it's at the high school or whether it's in our office, the ability to have the computerized testing generally is done by the athletic trainer. I mean, at least that's what we do at our school. And is that not right, Dr. Swearingen?
Yes, that's exactly right. Is this the point where I come in and say, gee, I recommend that you all fund athletic trainers for every single high school in the state? And because, you know, and that's a part of the lack of unequal medical training or treatment that our students are given. And I've taken it away from you. Excuse me, Dr. Watson, please. Had you finished your question?
I had.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, generally the impact testing things are carried out by the certified trainers. And they do have the baseline, and they do that. And for those schools that practice that.
And so along the same lines, to be honest with you, I'm not that terribly concerned about GHSA. I mean, we, as a physician on the sidelines, I mean, I think that my experience has been that we do a pretty good job of that. But you know, the bill is going to be applying to all age groups down to, what did we say? 7 years old.
Here's the dilemma.
That's an interesting. Yeah. That's an interesting concept. I mean, you know, I'm certainly not in disagreement that the awareness needs to be there. It is absolutely. And will this bill bring awareness to it? I think absolutely, if it passes. And even if it doesn't pass. But the other issue is that, so GHSAs, sounds like they're doing a good job, and I think they are doing a good job, but the youth coach, who's coaching that 7-year-old, I mean, we got the physical exam there. We're going to be doing the cognitive assessment on the 7-year-old. Am I reading that wrong?
Did you read the bill wrong? It was only, I don't think they require a physical exam on 7-year-olds.
No, we're going to delete where it says the definition of the cognitive assessment, are physical exams not required in sports physicals?
No, they're not. No, they're not for the younger age groups.
So so we're saying that the middle school program kids are not, they don't have physical exams before they.
My guess, Dr. Watson, my guess would be that is strictly a school district policy issue. That the Georgia High School Association has no authority over anything below grade 9. And my guess is that anything on PPE requirements, coaches' education, things of that sort, would be a school district thing. And we've had this discussion as Georgia Concussion Coalition has been meeting now for 15 months or more. And that is, do you handle only the easy thing, which is the GHSA, which has a lot of checks and balances, and it's pretty well contained, and, for lack of a better term, sort of forget about or abandon those younger kids who are in danger also. And that's the trade-off that we have. Do you want to open the can of worms to really protect these kids, or do you say we need to have safer ground? And that's your call.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Representative Mitchell, why don't you go back up and we'll go through the bill now and let's see what. No, he's gone.
Once again, I want to thank Madam Chair Cooper and Representative Clark for their healthy collaboration here. And I just want to say as well, Representative Watson, parental permission is all that is required for the youth sports. We don't get into requiring physicals until they get into middle school.
Okay, Representative Reinders, we'll start with you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And Mr. Mitchell, Representative Mitchell, I want you to know that I support you 100%. I just want to make sure that this language is the way it should be. So I've got several. Let's start on line number 41, political subdivision thereof. 41.
Yeah.
Political subdivision thereof. So in other words, the baseball field, and just a hypothetical, it's all about the wording. The baseball field that is owned by the Little League or the Dixie Youth of America, but is mowed by the county or the municipality in exchange for deals that are done in concession, would that or would that not be covered?
It would be covered. That's more political, legal styling than anything else.
And again, that's the only reason why I want to bring these to people's attention, because I've walked those fields.
Well, I think we need to ask legal
saying.
counsel. Betsy?
Right. A political subdivision would be a city or a
County.
Right.
If the city or the county
Didn't own it or lease it, it wouldn't be covered.
That's right.
And my point would be that I don't think that's your intent.
Wait a minute.
Well, wait. Under that definition, though, but if you look at that in conjunction with line 66, it's including those public recreation facilities
and private.
Okay, well, I was going to go to athletic leagues in just a second. I just think there may be a way to perhaps tighten that language up there just a little bit on 41.
It is covered under the next thing.
All right, let's go to the next line on page 42 of that athletic activity that begins at 7 years of age. Now, Miss Amanda Cook said any time and any sport. Do you know what the sign-up age is for T-ball? Yes, sir, Mr. Swearingen, what was that? 4 years of age?
My son played at 3.
Yes.
It
And
wasn't
Future
much-
Stars,
wasn't
I
much
think, is something
baseball.
that's played in some. I think it's called Future Stars in some leagues. Is that right? And as well as some of that flag football before age 7, correct?
Right.
All right. Now, just segueing there a little bit, because I just don't know how you come up with a 7. Let's go quickly to line number 77. Required as a condition of participation in any youth athletic activity that the youth athlete and the youth athlete's parents or legal guardian sign. So are we asking the 7-year-old to sign?
Betsy?
yeah, technically we are there, and we can qualify that, at a certain age if you want to. But you're right, under that language, it would require both the child and the parent to.
Yeah.
I think that was a.
Yeah, that's.
Although Betsy is near perfect, I think that.
But I still have a big question, a big broad question that I'd like the medical people to answer, which is, forget the signing. I don't know if an 11-year-old is. We got any lawyers here, BJ? Is an 11-year-old okay to sign something?
They don't have to sign it.
They don't have to sign it.
Legislative drafting error.
And what is the correct age to start some of this testing? Why did you choose 7?
Can I answer that question?
Sure.
I chose 7.
Okay. It's a great number. It's my favorite number, Madam Chair.
As I said earlier, and I think you saw the passion of Representative Clark on a particular provision, and there are some other provisions. This was a collaborative effort to get us where we are today. I'm so grateful for that collaboration, and I think the chair answered it most appropriately.
If I may continue on line 44.
You want an answer to 7? Come on.
I just thought y'all going to. I'm giving you the ones to fix.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. You want to pick 7? Okay. And the doctors can see. But by the limited child development background degree, all right, the body weight of it's about the time that you get the body weight of a 7-year-old, and I mean, where they might really, when they hit another one. Now, obviously, anytime you can get a kid to hit in a certain way, but it seems before age 7, there's such little body mass in most of them, you cannot do it for all, that seemed to be an age when they're more active and more cognizant of a real competitive sport where they're much more likely to go after each other. And I chose 7, and if one of the doctors can give us a better time for that, they can come and testify to it. But that's what I based it on. Okay, go ahead. What's the next one?
Thank you so much. Organized athletic activity on line 44. This may be one of those Betsy's things because I just want to make sure. Does that mean that my intramural church league basketball that's not using any public or private facilities, or perhaps my industrial bowling?
If it was an athletic league, then it would.
Is bowling athletic?
Well,
it comes on ESPN. Okay. And again, I just want to bring up how we tighten it up, Madam Chair. That's all I'm trying to do. There's,
all right.
If I may, in the church league that's owned by private churches.
No, I think the intention of it, if I'm not correct, Betsy, was it not if it's a youth activity where they pay a fee to...
Yeah.
Right.
If the paying of the fee would trigger.
Yeah, okay. Well, actually, that was interesting because that's where I was going there next. Line 66, each public recreational facility and each athletic league which sponsors youth athletic activities in which there's a participation fee shall. Now, see, when I hear sponsor, and I've got my Dixie Youth or Little League baseball team, any all-star parents out there that had to go get sponsors and put it on the sleeves, is that to buy the uniforms? Those are the sponsor of the youth leagues. They're actually the sponsors of the team. Did anybody ever do that? Isn't that what a sponsor is? So, I mean, I don't think that's what we meant by sponsoring that word. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think we can tighten that up, Representative Reinders.
Because we go out there as legislators sometimes and may sponsor a team or an all-star team, give them $100, and we're a sponsor, and we get a name on a T-shirt.
Yeah, we're talking about sponsoring the actual activity of the league.
Okay.
And finally, well, I feel bad about this, number 72. Require each coach with whom the club, facility, or league directly contracts with. Mr. Swearingen, he's been around it too long. He knows exactly where I'm going with this. Now, I would never, when I was coaching, never ever get my 2 assistant coaches based on how good their sons could pitch.
What?
I understand. I understand.
Yeah, Joe knows.
I understand.
Used to recruit the parents to get the kid.
And your point?
Okay.
But what's the problem?
And your point?
But the point is that you were able in youth leagues to protect X amount of parents, X amount of children by getting their coaches, by getting their fathers or mothers to say they were a coach. So in other words, if I say, Nikki, don't worry about it. Nikki, don't worry about it. All I want you to come on my team, serve some cookies, and you know what I was guaranteed? I'd get Nikki's son on my team.
Your point?
But she would be a coach then.
And?
Who may not ever show up, who may not have any, and I'm just concerned a little bit about requiring each coach with whom the club, because I can't speak for the entire state of Georgia, but I'm just a little concerned with who we call out there a coach, that this may hinder
you from hiring the parent of the best pitcher in the town.
And that would hinder them from taking...
who you don't know in some areas how tough it is to sit there and they go, I don't know anything about baseball, I don't know anything about football, and we're sitting there going, well, can you hit them grounders? I mean, anybody that's coached has got to know how hard it is to get people out there on a volunteer basis. Come on.
Yeah. However...
And now we're going to sit there and go, and by the way, if you'll just do this medical training...
Yeah. No, it's not.
Well, you know what I mean.
It is...
Okay.
I might see head coach, something, but I'm sitting there going, when we're so desperate for volunteers out there in the real world, it's tough.
Okay. You through?
Well, I'm feeling bad, but just 1 or 2 more. No, go ahead. Go ahead. If you got some, go ahead.
No.
That's it. That's it. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Tack.
Always appreciate your concern, Representative Reinders.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Representative Mitchell, let's start with line 44, youth athletic activity. When I asked Ms. Van Gundy about the circumstance in which she suffered a concussion, as I read the definition in this section, it only the requirement is triggered only if, for example, a cheerleading squad is in competition against another team, club, or entity. And I'm not quite sure if that was the intent. I think the intent was to get all student athletes. Am I right about that?
Well, I will suggest to you that initially that was the intent of the bill. Madam Chair, I would say to you that as it is structured at present, it would not capture the specific incident that was referred to here.
Excuse me, it was Legislative Council's said that it would capture it. I mean, did we ask about the cheerleaders and other sports? Competitive
Right.
cheerleaders.
Yeah.
Is that
But
what
not at a pep rally that wouldn't cover it.
The specific incident in which she referenced here would not be captured if she was cheerleading at a prep rally.
got it.
And there's two different kinds of cheerleading now.
Right, competitive as much.
So I think that's something that's I wanted to clarify. Going down to line 57, there's it says require each coach and every official of a youth athletic activity. I'm assuming that is like someone who's officiating, not necessarily the officer of the company. I'm sorry, at school. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Okay. Then the question goes back down to the. I'll come back to that issue in a second. Line 79, and this is subsection D that talks about the public recreation facility requirements. In 79, it says you have to provide an information sheet which includes, but is not limited to, adequate notice of the requirements contained in this code section. What are the requirements contained in the code section that's supposed to be contained in the notice? Is it the education requirements or?
Yeah.
The return to play.
Okay. Oh, okay. And then this is the one that's kind of confusing me a little bit. Line 128, which is I think the immunity clause on here. Then they use a different. We're only requiring education for the coach and the officials, yet we're granting immunity to everybody on the school board, and officers and employees. I'm just wondering why we're doing that.
Betsy.
Because the burden, for instance, on line 51 is on the local board of education, and then later on the athletic league or public recreation facility to make sure that those things are done. And the individual also has to do things. So there's burdens on both the entities as well as the individual.
Well said.
Okay. But getting back to the D section then, the recreational facility.
Which line are you referring to?
Well, going back then to 66 on. Is there a requirement that the athletic league, which sponsors the youth athletic activities that's not on the school board, required to create some, making sure that the coaches comply?
Yes. That they sign it?
Yes.
Yes. That they take the course and sign it? Yes.
And one other question. It says the code section is 128 shall not create any liability for or create cause of action against. Does that mean it's not altering the current state of the law if you sue on a different theory?
That's exactly right.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Who? Randall? No, Representative, well, who? Oh, Representative Beverly.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just had a quick question about line 42 again, and I want to come back to the age requirement. And the only reason I want to come back to the age requirement, Madam Chair, is this. There was a book that was written a couple years ago by Malcolm Gladwell. It was called Outliers. In that book, he stipulated that Canadian hockey players are so good because of when they're born. And if they're born in January, by the time December rolls around for them to register to play, those kids who were born early in the year actually are a lot quicker, a lot heavier, and they are more agile. Their functioning is a little bit better just because they had that time to develop. So you would have a kid who potentially was born in September, lower weight, playing against a kid who was born in January, higher weight, higher skill, and they may be the same age, but that kid has a competitive advantage at the same age because he has a competitive advantage on weight and agility. And so even though 7 may be a good number, I think you raised it, Madam Chair, it was the idea, what is the body mass that may be critical and not necessarily the age. And so is there a way to stipulate in this bill that maybe there's a weight requirement or a body mass requirement that would actually reduce the impact for kids who may have the same age but have different body shapes, so that you really are getting at the heart of preventing these concussions? I mean, one of my kids' football, I don't know if you can do that or not. If there's, because I played, Pop Warner ball, you always got weight and your height measurement, and that was always to make sure that you were statistically within a group that you could play against. But I'm not sure that we could do that in this bill or not.
I think we can. Okay, who's next? Representative Watson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I just had one thing to raise. On lines 117, where it talks about the youth athlete is removed from the field, and the coach shall notify the youth athlete's parent or legal guardian and shall not permit the youth athlete to return to play. I certainly in middle school or in lower age, it's going to be the coach that makes that decision, but and Dr. Swearengin may be able to help us out with this. It's been my experience that the coach has never made the decision, and it's the athletic trainer on the sidelines that always makes the decision and always discusses this with the parents, and the coaches are totally removed from this situation.
Okay. Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Swearengin?
Yes, I think that in most cases you're absolutely right. There is also, don't take that chronologically, because sometimes you'll remove the kid from playing and it may be later in the evening before you can get a hold of parents. So the idea is as soon as he's removed, they have to notify the parent, make sure that implication doesn't exist.
Okay, it's very hard to cover all aspects. Representative Watson, do you have a way to write that so that it would, in the schools that do have the coach in these younger age groups and all, the coach or his designee,
that's probably
our designee would do it? Okay, and it is not to say that they have to do it immediately. Okay, I think what we're going to have to do is put this back to and let some work be done on it, but I'll take any of the other, so we know what we're working on. Representative Reiner said he felt like Representative Mitchell had a good bill. We just needed, I didn't see you. I thought you left. You were sitting behind. That, don't let me speak for you. That just needs a little bit of cleaning up. Okay, who's next? Representative Kidd.
I totally concur with what you just said, Madam Chairman. We're all for this very much so. We can henpeck it to death in trying to perfect it. But I'll just make one comment rather than address the different lines that I might have. But are we trying to make the law too specific, or could we possibly? This is going through State Department of Health. Can rules and regulations address a lot of this and have more leeway for change and so forth? I don't mind being too specific, but that might be where some of the problems are coming from.
This information is available. There's online thing for the coaches to take. There's online already what is recommended and so forth. They're just trying to get the information. They're not trying to be really specific. They're referring them back to, we're saying to the Public Health Department, just look and see what the CDC recommendations are. And if I remember correctly, Mr. Swearengin said they're very much like what they already, could you say that again for the committee, that they're very much like what you already.
The mesh is going to be great. If this bill passes, by mandating some of these procedures, that's where you will take it beyond where we are with the GHSA right now.
And that they do very well, except for a few changes, mesh together. We
I-
tried to do that in drafting a bill. We looked at other states, since there's 30-something other states. We tried to keep it and mesh it together. So
I know the Brain and Spinal Trust Commission has been looking at this a lot the last couple of years. And I would love to ask them all their inputs and so forth. But one very quick thing, it knows a lot of times you don't have a, quote, certified official to go out into a game, to referee a game. And so they're pulling somebody out of the stands to go referee. And that person, obviously not going to be aware of all this kind of stuff. And I'm not sure that the trial lawyers, if they look at this, can you weigh the liability before an action is taking place? I don't know. But I'm very much in favor of this. I'm in favor of doing what you said. Let's put it back together and bring it back more perfected. If I can help, I'd love to do so.
Okay, pardon, what? Representative Randall, you have? Okay, that's what we're fixing to do. We have one more question and we're going to do it. Okay, who do we got?
Wait.
Okay, she waves. Okay, Representative Mitchell, I think that we have some work to do. Representative Reiners, do you want to work with Representative Mitchell?
Yeah, nothing would please me more. And I want to say something. It was really interesting. There was a show on HBO recently, a documentary. I can't remember now. I got a good memory, but it's kind of short. That even Lou Gehrig, where they named Lou Gehrig's disease from, they were theorizing that he may have been hit too many times, and that they believe that it can lead to Lou Gehrig's disease.
Okay.
And that's a new phenomenon. So.
And like I say, I don't think we can cover everything or know everything that's going to happen, but we can try to make a good general law. Thank you very much, the committee, for sticking with us, for the questions that you had and the suggestions, and we will have them work on the bill and bring it back.